Floods in Iran have killed at least 60 people. Iran has been experiencing exceptionally heavy rain for the past 2 weeks. Hundreds of cities and villages have been flooded and crops have been destroyed. And more rain is expected this weekend. For more on the impact of the floods in Iran, I'm joined now by Kaveh Madani. He was previously serving as the deputy head of Iran's Department of the Environment, and he joins us now from New Haven, Connecticut. Kaveh, thank you so much for making time for us today. I really would like to begin by getting a sense from the people that you are speaking with on the ground. What is the situation like? What are the worst affected areas? How bad is it in Iran?
It is really bad, and I don't know why this is not getting the international attention. 23 out of 31 provinces in Iran have been hit by the floods. Heavy rainfalls are happening. More is expected to come. People have died. Infrastructure have been washed away. Villages have been damaged. People have died, and a lot of people are now without homes and in dire need of help, assistance. They need doctors on the ground. They need food, water. They're out of electricity. A lot of cities are even gone, and this is a problem that Iran has not experienced for a long time. Has been much more damaging than the earthquakes that we have recently experienced, and it's going to get worse because the reservoirs are now full, and it is really hard to control and welcome additional water.
So it's very difficult for us to get clear information out of the country. What are you hearing in terms of support for the people who are dealing with the images that we're looking at? We're looking at incredible photographs and videos of the flooding in many of these communities. What is the government doing to help these people?
So we have two crises at the moment. One is managing the reservoir and controlling water to prevent additional floods. We the guys on the ground have not been successful in stopping the water, and as I said, it's going to get worse. And the other one is about helping the victims. Again, it is really hard in this situation to help the people on the ground. Different parts of the government and the regime are trying to do something and help the people, but it's hard to coordinate. There is a crisis of crisis management, I would say, and because they have not been ready and prepared for this situation. The country was under a drought for a long time, and it seems that people forgot that flood has been happening in Iran for a long time, and it's not unusual.
Kaveh, I want to address the issue of how the government has been handling it, because we're hearing from so many people that there's a lot of anger in Iran about the mismanagement, that the government has not made this a priority. You've addressed that this was something that had been forgotten about because they were dealing with the drought and the lack of water for so long. Why hasn't the government made this a bigger priority?
It is, I was on a government, and still this is a hard question to answer. The country is dealing with a lot of problems, and unfortunately environment was never a priority, as it's not in many other parts of the world. The reality is that the country was so focused on controlling water and storing water, and then if they forgot about downstream of reservoirs, people have developed in wrong places. In riverbeds, in river valleys, and now a little bit of water is causing a lot of trouble. Plus, the country has been so paranoid, I would say, about its food security, and so concerned about food security under international pressure, that everything was about using water for additional crops and producing food. And again, flood was not a concern. A lack of regulation, lack of supervision, and then lack of I would say foresight and not seeing the future. Plus, add the fact that climate change might have exacerbated the situation. We know that under climate change, we will see more extreme events. These floods, in terms of magnitude and the geographical coverage, are unprecedented in Iran's recent history. So the system was not prepared for it. The citizens are also surprised. So the amount of water that we are receiving in some places are 3 times more than last year, and we still haven't, 6 months into the water year. So it's a very unusual year that is coming after almost a decade, and people are not prepared.
When you're talking about a country like Iran, everything, including a flooding situation, becomes political in the dialogue around it. And this is no different. So we've heard from the Iranian government blaming the Trump administration in the United States, saying that the sanctions are the reason that they're not able to access individuals, get aid out to them. At the same time, we've heard from the Red Cross saying, no, the sanctions have nothing to do with the inability to get the aid out to the people who most desperately need it. So from your perspective, where is the truth?
The truth is always somewhere in between. But what concerns me is the fact that people are dying and have lost their homes, and then yet the politicians are fighting their political fight. Yes, it might be possible to right now transfer goods to Iran, but yeah, and you can even transfer like food, water, blanket, and other things. But the equipment is also missing. The system is not prepared for it. They don't have what they need. They need planes, helicopters, like troops, equipment, and those things are not there. And of course, sanctions have had an effect. But you cannot blame a disaster like this, the damages of a disaster like this, only on climate change or only on your enemies, only on your sanctions. This is a complex problem, complex human nature problems. It has multiple effects, and there are lots of things. These games are not helpful. What we need is the whole world should pay attention to this. If this was a terrorist attack under which like 70 people had died, every news agency, every media would have covered it. But now people are dying, people are in need, and even if the floods stop tomorrow, we know that these people cannot, recover their lives and do their normal living for a long, long time. West of Iran, a lot of places are poor. They were already poor, and now they're going to be even poorer. Farmers who were waiting for years to receive water, looking at the sky, waiting for water, and now have even lost their crops and have been damaged. It's really a humanitarian crisis, and I think the whole world should help. And honestly, it's not only about goods and sending money to Iran, it's also about information. Today someone ask me if I have access to some forecast data of one of the systems because of the sanctions. They don't have access to it. Again, I'm not blaming things on the sanctions, but I'm just giving you examples of how even transfer of knowledge and information is affecting the people on the ground.
Kaveh, we are running out of time, but you have brought this up in your first answer. You've addressed it again now multiple times. The lack of international attention, international governments, international media not really talking about this story as maybe perhaps some other natural disasters get major attention. So why do you think that is? And also, how does that affect the people who are in Iran who are dealing with what we're looking at now?
I'm sad to say this, but probably the death toll is not high enough to get the attention. Plus, we know how isolated Iran is politically right now. We also know that the Iranians' pride actually doesn't let them ask for help from the rest of the world. So all these things are just hurting the people of Iran. And I think in a situation like this, the human beings should put politics aside and help those who are in need. What is happening in Iran can happen anywhere else in the world, and politicians need to learn that these are not good times to fight these sorts of political fights.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this evening, sir. Kaveh Madani joined us from New Haven, Connecticut.